Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind, Season 8, Minneapolis. Let's watch.
A mistake. Like, there's obviously no right way to grieve that, and you were doing what made the most sense for you.
Yeah. You were never, low on my list.
It's good to hear.
No, actually, you were never really low, but then, tonight, I was like, wow, okay, Lauren.
You've, been pretty high on my list.
Okay. One of the benefits of watching this reality TV show so intently. By the way, when I talk with friends and family, or my hair cutter, for example, about this show, I realize that, for most people when they're watching a show like this, they're passively watching it. They might be also on another device while they're watching the show. At the very least, people aren't pausing and thinking and taking notes for sure, right? So I've realized that the level of detail that I am gathering and remembering, even when I talk with my wife, she's watching it upstairs right now, she won't remember people's names nearly as well as I mean, sometimes I get the names wrong because I'll switch names up. You might notice that sometimes. Usually I try to edit that out or something. But anyway, I realize just how much I'm orienting my brain and my clinical knowledge toward this particular show. And one of the things that is an outgrowth of that, or an outgrowth, is that each season there's a sense of the types of things people say in the pods. And I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say anything like that. Now, we've only seen the edit, but I can't remember a time, unless the person had major red flags that turned out to be indicative of something later on in the season. I can't remember a time when I heard someone say that phrase at this stage of the pods. Or at any stage. Let's rewind what he just said.
You were never, low on my list.
It's good to hear.
No.
You were never low on my list. Now, there's a possibility that he is saying that consciously, knowing that it is demeaning or putting her down or telling her that he doesn't like her that much or didn't like her that much. Or there's a possibility that he actually thinks by saying that, or doesn't detect the potential way it would come across. Here's just an hypothesis, that he actually is connecting with Lauren because Dave is connecting with Molly and Lauren, right? And yeah, it did look like, in the edit anyway, that he and Molly were connecting more than he and Lauren. And so, at least in the edit, and I think what he's saying right now is reflective of how this particular date felt closer or more optimistic about him and Lauren. So he's now realizing, previously I had Molly or someone else or other people as a greater possibility of someone that I would be pursuing later in the week. But now Lauren has risen in the rankings, right? And instead of wording it in a way that would be typical to others on this show, and I'm hoping, your instinct would be to word it differently, right? You wouldn't necessarily say that. You wouldn't say, you know what, I had you at 8 out of 15, but after today, I have you more at 3. Even if that's literally what you are thinking, because that's the name of the game. You're trying to figure out who you like, and you date a lot of people. Imagine a different way of putting that, what he just said. And if this was the only bit of data that we saw along these lines, then I wouldn't be reacting to it. Or maybe I would be, because it's such a weird way of putting it. Let's rewind that again.
You were never, low on my list.
It's good to hear.
No, actually, you were never really low, but then, tonight, I was like, wow, okay, Lauren.
It seems like he genuinely wants to say something nice. That's the way it looks to me. I can't know, but that would be the typical explanation given what we're seeing, even for someone that had a characterological issue. But the way it comes out, right? It's hurtful. It's saying something about how he sees the world or how he wants it to be or what he's trying to communicate. And I don't know what he's communicating precisely. I don't know how she's receiving it. We kind of know a little bit about how she's receiving it. She's like, oh, okay, thanks, I guess. Because it It was hurtful. It was insulting. And in the midst of trying to say something nice, it yet comes out as an insult among a date that is going pretty well. Things are going well. And so here's the way to hypothesize this. Typically, when people have, dare I say, simplistic conceptualizations, even clinicians, by the way, I'm guilty of this at times. Everyone has their off day or their blind spots or lack of sophistication or something. But a typical first hypothesis is that individuals that are establishing themselves as superior or better than, they know that they are doing that, and they do it gleefully and willingly, and they like to do it. They like to put other people down because they want to be dominant. They want to be superior. And yeah, but the vast majority of time, what is happening internally for these individuals, I'm not saying this is him because I can't know, I'll never know, we'll never know. What I would find with clients, and to tell you the truth, even just in personal interactions, that for these individuals, they, have the normal desire to connect and have attachments, contrary to what people on the internet will say. So let's say, never mind Dave, let's just think about a hypothetical client. And let's say the client comes in and we have surmounted a number of hills to demonstrate to the client that I can be trusted and that the client actually feels safe with me and is having some corrective experiences around having their needs met that they did not get met when they were young, and they're having some breakthroughs and that kind of thing. So, with a typical personality disorder client, it would probably be at least a year into treatment, 6 months at the very least, maybe even a number of years. And they come into session one day and they've been feeling positive about me, and they want to tell me that they appreciate my work with them. And this is something that hopefully happens with clients that are like this, that suffer from this personality problem. And almost all the time, when they take that leap to say something nice to me, it will sting somehow. And it will make me feel small. Like a client, this hypothetical client would say, I've been really enjoying the therapy. I'm realizing, when I first met you, I thought, who is this guy? He comes across like he doesn't know anything about psychology. And, remember that time when you were talking about that thing? And I just thought, boy, maybe I should go to see someone else. I mean, I know more about this topic than this guy does. But you know what? In spite of that, I'm realizing that, therapy is actually, it's really helping me. And I've been working really hard, as you know, and I've been making a lot of breakthroughs. Okay, role play over. I hope you get it, that there's a kernel of a desire to compliment or connect or build someone up, but it doesn't come out that way. Well, what's happening? Well, for the individual, typically the conceptualization that I'll have is that, one, to compliment and to acknowledge this relationship is extremely scary, really for anyone. It's at least somewhat scary, but for these individuals, it's very scary because they've never had it, and they particularly never had it when they really needed it, from 0 to 3 or 4 years old. And so they don't necessarily realize it, but as they are having the motivation to connect or be vulnerable or open up or compliment, they or indicate that they care or indicate that they might depend even a small amount on attachments. As they do that, there is a very quick wall that goes up and fear, and normally they just wouldn't say it, right? But they're pushing past it because they're developing. They've had a good date. So pushing past it. I'm not saying it's just him. I'm just saying this is what it's making me think. That this hypothetical client would say, no, I want to, because I've done a lot of work and it's really starting to feel like I'm getting my needs met, or there's some sense of that, right? It's really heavily motivating to the point of overcoming those initial defense mechanisms of shutting it down. There's various different defense mechanisms that I won't go into right now. But so I really want to say something, but I'm vulnerable, which doesn't feel good. And I'm also not used to showing that I care, and I feel not superior right now. So these individuals when they are not superior, they know, even though they're not, they know they are inferior. Not only are they inferior, but they're vastly inferior. So it's just all or nothing, black or white. It's a toggle switch. If they're not superior, then they're vastly inferior. And they're unsafe, and they're irrelevant, they're worthless, they're nothing. So if people have a choice, they'd rather be superior, right? And so they're going to work really hard, depending on the level of pathology, to establish that they're superior, even in their own minds, but also to other people. And as they are about to compliment, that fear will kick in. Uh-oh, I don't feel superior right now. I'm complimenting, I'm showing vulnerability. I must be falling into the vast abyss of nothingness. So how do I manage this? I have to establish that I'm superior, so I will recall these moments, this hypothetical client, where I thought that my therapist was an idiot. It's a very common transference that the client will have about their therapist, is that their therapist is stupid or uneducated or didn't go to the right school or isn't rich, whatever the flavor of superiority that they need to establish. And for specialists in this area, like myself, we understand that and we work with it and we detect it and we don't take it personally and we don't get locked in on some kind of power struggle with the client, which they frequently will trigger in everyone. Every expert that works with these kind of individuals knows that you'll have good moments and bad moments as a therapist because these kinds of characterological issues can be extremely triggering. And these individuals are unrelenting sometimes with their behavior and their need to be superior, and they will figure out how to get under your skin, and it can be very overwhelming, even when you are watching your P's and Q's as a therapist. A session is 55 minutes long. You can hold on maybe for the first 25 minutes, but after a while, anyway. So I hope you get my point that as they're trying to be nice because they have needs, and they're like, ooh, this person, there's something good, the human thing that we all understand and feel, right? But as it's starting to emerge, it's like, well, wait, how am I going to remain superior? Because I'm not going to be inferior, God damn it. So I have to marry the superior statement with the statement of connection. Does that make sense?
You were never low on my list.
It's good to hear.
No, actually, you were never really low, but then tonight, I was like, wow, okay, Lauren.
You've been pretty high on my list for.
Ooh.
And I'll say it again that how many times does this happen on the show where someone to us looks concerning, and not only are people connecting with them, but they seem to be having many, these kinds of red flag dudes, people seem to, because it's not just the men, it's everybody. They seem to frequently have multiple people vying for them. I just want to do a quick survey of the past members. Well, if we go back to the very beginning, season 1, there was Barnett, who had 3 women after him. There was KJ, I can't remember her name, and Amber and Jessica. But Barnett doesn't really fit that, at least to me. I don't remember thinking there were a ton of red flags. Okay, then season 2, there was Shane, who had Natalie and Shayna after him. Take what you will from that. Season 3, we had Cole, that had both Zeneb and Colleen. Well, was Colleen that after Cole? I mean, they had at least a minor connection, but I don't think that really fits. Okay, then season 4, the Seattle season, you had Micah, who had both Paul and Kwame after her, right? So that's along those lines, I think. Although, were there red flags? Oh, yeah. I mean, well, we saw, yeah, that totally fits. We, the audience in the pods, were seeing massive red flags. And yet, Paul and Kwame, who, I'm guessing at the very least don't have as many red flags as Micah was exhibiting, were both very much after Micah. And then in season 6, one could say that Chelsea might fit this phenomenon, that she both had Jimmy and Trevor after her and would later present some concerning behaviors, although I don't think we saw I don't remember seeing red flags in the pods. And then last season, season 7 of Love is Blind, we had Leo, who had both Brittany and Hannah very much after him, which fits this phenomenon in that we were seeing red flags and multiple people. So what would that be? What's going on there? I don't know. It's not a representative sample enough to say anything. Plus, it's on an edit. Plus, it's a squishy, subjective evaluation of what's a red flag and blah, blah, blah. Another thing that I have learned from my contact and from cast members on the show is that almost all the time, the featured cast members are connecting with additional people even later in the week. And it's filmed, obviously, but it's not included in the edit because it doesn't really serve the overall story. And it would just, I think the editors and the showrunners think it would just kind of clutter up the space, meaning that it would be too distracting. And they're really trying to make this show into a very concise, 10 to 12 episode experience. And if you think about how much is happening on the show in that short amount of time, it's really quite a feat. And to get there, they have to make some sacrifices. If this show was on TLC, it would be 30, 40 episodes long, and they would go into all those side quests, if you will. And I would actually enjoy that because I think it would just be interesting and more data. But anyway, so I don't know. I'm going to pause it and give this some thought because nothing's coming to mind in terms of why this would be that the red flag pod person would almost, always or very frequently would have multiple people very much putting them as their number one. Okay, it only took me 5 seconds to think. I mean, when I'm doing reaction videos, I'm talking while I'm thinking. So sometimes I just need to stop for 5 seconds. I actually tell my students this, that as a therapist, if you need to, just ask the client to sit in silence or have them look at their phone while you just give it some thought, because mid-session you might need that to get things back on track or to just contemplate something, right? I think if I had a therapist that did that, I think I would be a little bewildered because most therapists don't, but I would be happy that they were putting in the effort to make sure that they were providing a good service. But anyway, so I think there are some obvious ones that you were probably thinking of because I imagine most people would think this. Y'all are smart people. One is that when you have an individual that is sought after, then like Black Friday shopping, scarcity increases demand, right? But why would the demand be there in the first place? It's possible that the way that they talk or the way they present themselves, it has the appearance of someone that is of high status or of high demand or high value, right? If someone is groveling and saying, please love me in the pods, even though they might be a fantastic partner, a lot of people are going to run away from that, right? So if you're presenting as someone that has a lot of options, even in the pods, but outside, and a lot of people, it'll just kind of trigger that feeling. One could argue that that's not a viable way of choosing who to pursue, but we have our biases and we can't help it. It's also potentially rational to do so because in the pods, you're looking for any clue as to whether or not this person is going to work out or not, right? And if you have two people that you've narrowed it down to, and one seems to credibly be the sort of person in and outside the pods that a lot of people like and want to be with, and the other person is not, then you might go with door number one because it's just another indication that they might actually be a catch, right? And you want to catch that, not just on the superficial stuff, but on a lot of things. Anyway, so there's that. But I think it also, given the few examples of this, I think it can trigger some individuals' feelings of wanting to impress. Okay, so I actually just edited out a whole thing because I talked very specifically, and sometimes I forget this is on the internet, and I was talking about, well, so what I'll say is that I have clinical and or personal experience in my past that taught me that individuals can establish themselves as powerful and charismatic and sought after and cool and influential, not necessarily because they possess the characteristics of someone that people want to follow or fall in love with or listen to or anything. You know, they're not particularly smart, they're not particularly beautiful, they're not particularly connected, you know, they don't have resources. The one thing that elevated them to the top of the pyramid was they put other people down and they came across like they were superior. And so those individuals can sometimes unfairly and dangerously actually just, you know, some of them are elected to office. And so that bias that we have, we could speculate, we can't know, but it's possible that in our distant past, evolution-wise, as we were social animals on the African savanna during the Pleistocene, 200,000, 500,000 years ago, that those tribes, those groups of Homo sapiens that had a tendency to elevate someone into a leadership position who showed the signs of someone that you should follow. You know, people back then didn't have PowerPoint presentations or psychological assessments. You just had to kind of, in the midst of all the other survival things that you're trying to engage in, just have a heuristic around like, who do you elevate in the hierarchy? And it's possible that we evolved, the gene or the tendency was selected for, at the very least culturally we have this true, right? That we have been taught anyway, that there are people that are inherently leaders. They are inherently smarter, better, and we will follow them. We have lots of psychological studies, sociological studies demonstrating this. One that just pops in my head that I thought was pretty elegant as a way of illuminating this bias was an experiment where there was a lot of people waiting to cross the street at a crosswalk, right? And there's cars and stuff. And in one group of experiments, they had this guy, a lab person, a researcher, one of the scientists or someone that they hired, who would walk up to the crosswalk, and before it turned walk, they would cross. So they would jaywalk. And then there were people observing to see how many people would, or if anyone would follow the jaywalker across the street. And the one variable that they changed was what the dude was dressed in. And in some instances, he was dressed, I think, shabbily, at the very least, not fancy. And in the other condition, he was dressed up in a fancy suit, and he had his hair all combed, and he looked like he was, I don't know if this was in New York, but like a Wall Street guy or something. And significantly more people followed him when he was wearing the suit. That sort of thing, right? So I wonder if that's what's going on. That there are certain people, the Micahs and I don't know if Shane really fits, but the Daves. I think another part of it is that when I'm watching this show, I care about everyone. I care about Dave too. I don't even know if I have no idea what's going on with Dave. He has a lot of positive qualities. I can see positive. I saw positive qualities in Matthew. I still do. I see positive qualities in Trevor. I see everyone has issues, and those issues are typically because of stuff that happened. I mean, do we think that Steven from season 7 doesn't have traumas? Like, there are reasons. It doesn't make it okay, but I believe in people. I believe in you. I believe in Dave. When I watch this show, I hope the best for people, and I don't want people to get screwed over. And I just can't imagine. I mean, typically the stuff we see in the pods is like 2% what eventually happens down the line. There are many people that show no red flags in the pods, or the kinds of stuff that we see, it's not detectable as a red flag. It's retroactively, we'll look back and like, oh, I think we saw signs of. So I don't want people to be hurt. And when people like Dave have multiple people after, at the very least, he's going to dump someone, right? But even the person that I guess it's potentially, I don't know though. You probably have watched ahead, but maybe not that much, but maybe more than I have. At the very least, I don't have any idea what's going to happen. Maybe he is another Marshall, or he's a Garrett and Taylor, or a Cam and Lauren. I can't. How can I know? Let's hope. All right. Well, I want to remind everyone that if you wish to communicate with me, that's a weird way of putting it. If you want to ask me a question or have a comment that you know that I'll see, then you want to go to the website, psychologyinseattle.com, and go to the contact button and fill out the form there. Stacy, my wife, looks at all those emails and will forward stuff to me. We get a lot of emails, so I don't necessarily see every email, but I try to. So that's the sure way to contact us. And otherwise, if you leave a comment in the comments section, I might not necessarily see it. Although during the kind of busy season, I try to monitor or, check out the comments. Also, keep in mind to not spoil things, because if you've watched ahead, because eventually the episodes that I'm posting will be far in the past compared to you, right? You will have watched maybe the whole season and I'm still mid-season. So if I'm going to read the comments, then you want to avoid spoilers. And there's ways of signaling a spoiler in YouTube, either by hitting return and saying spoiler ahead, and then you have to click more to see it, or there's actually a way to highlight out, if that makes any sense. I don't know how to do that necessarily, but there's a way. You can Google it, I'm sure. So commenting. Also, if you're a member, then I'm more likely to see your comments, because I will, as a first pass, will sort the comments by members, because I want to, reward those people who are literally paying my bills so that I can dedicate the time. If I didn't have those people contributing, I would have to be working a regular job, which, I did for many years and I'm okay with. But I don't know. I feel like this is the next or final chapter of my career. I don't know. I like it. And so I like doing this, and I hope to keep doing it. But, I've always in my head said, well, if things languish regarding membership, I can always go back to doing everything I was doing before. But that would be a bummer, I think, because, I don't know, I think there's a lot of fun and education and meaning and purpose and community. And I don't know, I'm quite fortunate to be in this position. I really like this. So I guess the long and the short of it is that if you are not becoming a member, then I will have to slide backwards in my career. I'm just joking. Anyway, take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.